Good morning, people. This is Big Boss Calvin 83. I need to address this again for the umpteenth time. They're Caucasian people. People of color cannot be racist against y'all. And only you Caucasian people can be racist against people of color because y'all have the wealth, y'all have the influence, the status, and the power, and you own and control the banks, you control the corporations, and which supply jobs and decide who gets to have a job and who doesn't get to have a job. You control the military, you control the government. You understand what I'm saying? You control law enforcement. You control the legal system, the court system. Okay? And plus, y'all Caucasian people, that when it comes to racism, they are the real racists because they really stick together. It doesn't matter if a Caucasian person is a good person or a bad person, they will stick together no matter what. When it comes to plotting the racism. And let's look at throughout the history. Y'all have committed you enslaved people of color, you committed heinous acts against people of color, and genocide against people of color, and still doing it to this day. So when I hate it when you motherfuckers say to you Caucasian folks, fuck your comfort, number one. But y'all say you experience reverse racism. There's no such thing. Anybody can be racist. No. They gotta have power. They gotta own and control shit. They gotta own and control businesses. They gotta own and control the country. They gotta own and control the world, as a matter of fact. They gotta control the corporations. You gotta have people, you have to have business, you have to have controlled companies where they decide to practice certain hiring practices, legal or illegal, to discriminate against a certain group of people. Same with banks. When it comes to the banks, you have to own the banks and control the finances and decide which group of people can get a loan and which group of people you can deny a loan. And how much, and if you give them a loan, you're going to decide how much interest and you're going to charge and force them to pay this amount of money to get a loan. That ain't going to mean shit. Meanwhile, you're charging your own group very less and less interest, and you give them a loan, or you give them a fucking grant for nothing. And plus you got to be a group of people who can be racist and commit acts of violence and hate crimes and rape and pillage and steal land and resources against another ethnic group of people who are different from you, and get away with it. You have to have power, and you have to have influence and control money. And you gotta own resources and supply food, the food industry. You gotta control every industry. Oh, and dominate, and that's how you dominate another group of people. It's about owning and controlling stuff. So when I see people, when the Caucasian people are arguing about, well, the definition of racism, I'll give you an example right here. I believe that a race is primarily determinant of human traits, and I know it's early, y'all. Compicities, and that racial differences produce inherent superiority of a particular race. That's partly true, but that only one group of people can do that. 2. A doctrine or political program based on an assumption that racism is assigned to execute its principles. B, a political system or social justice social system founded on racism. Well, that's pretty accurate. But that proves my point. Only one group of people can do that. You have to have power to be a racist. You got to own and control resources, land, businesses, banks, healthcare industry, and all types of industries. You got to control the government, law enforcement, the food supplies. You got to control the weapons. You got to control the drugs that you people go to other countries and bring drugs into the so-called black community and bring guns into the fucking community. And not only that, you set the rules of regulation on how a police officer conducts themselves and treats other people, and you allow them to do certain things to a certain group of people based on their skin color. Since so-called black people do not control anything, y'all only can be racist. And this is incorrect. Number 3, racial prejudice or discrimination. Like I said before, that's a trick. That's trickery right there. Because this prejudice, do you know what prejudice means? Prejudice and racism are not the same. No, not. Prejudice is all based on. Let me give you the definition. Prejudice and racism is not the same. Racism equals power. Prejudice equals a perception and an opinion based on your experiences dealing with people or whatever you encountered in life. So let me give you an example. So if I was walking down the street and a dog attacks me, I'll be fearful of dogs based on what happens. That's a prejudice. Prejudice is not a bad thing. If you look at the history of what Caucasian people have done to people of color and other ethnic people of color, we have the right to be prejudiced against y'all, like it or not. Prejudice, the definition means 1, injury or damage resulting from judgment or action of another in disregard of one's rights, especially determined to one's legal rights. 2, a preconceived judgment or opinion. That was 1. Number 2, an adverse opinion or learning form without just grounds before sufficient knowledge. And basically, you see it all right here. The definition of prejudice: an irrational attitude or hostility directed towards against a group, race, or their supposed characteristics. See, what I see here is people trying to manipulate and come up with their own definition. Prejudice is basically what you've gone through, what you experienced, what your interactions was with people, or what environment you in, or interaction with animals. And it's just prejudice is basically your experiences and what you encounter and dealt with in life, and you have a certain attitude towards the people you dealt with and the environment you came from and in and out of. It's all based on your experience, and you formed your opinion based on those experiences. The thing is, these definitions have some truth and some lies. But I'm going to break it down for you, y'all. And it starts right here. Get out of here. Here we go. This is what I want to talk about. Race and ethnicity and racism and hate groups. This is the current news. This is a news organization. So I came across this on Facebook. So let's break it down. It's the title: Study finds so-called white Americans believe they experience more racism than African Americans. We know that's a fucking lie. Like I said, you have to have power and status and wealth and influence to be racist and own and control industries, companies, government, banks, the legal system, court system, law enforcement, organizations. This is so ridiculous. Okay, finally, this is bullshit right here. Come on. I don't know why my computer's acting slow, but we're gonna get through this together, y'all. There's a saying that the new racism is denying that racism exists. If that's the case, it may explain a study conducted by researchers from Tufts University School of Arts and Sciences and Harvard Business School. Their findings claim that self-described white Americans believe they have been replaced by blacks as primary victims of racial discrimination in contemporary America. The authors say that their study highlights how expectations of a post-racial society predicted or imagined in the wake of Barack Obama's presidency has far from been achieved. Come on. The study finds that both Caucasian and African Americans agree that anti-black racism has decreased over the last 6 years. Bullshit, it hasn't gotten worse. But I'll move on. Caucasians believe that anti-white racism has increased. Moreover, that the study finds that the majority of Caucasians have believed that anti-racism is a bigger problem than what African Americans face. Really? Okay, this is... Yeah, I'm gonna have to hold my tongue. Tufts Associate Professor of Psychology Samuel Summers, PhD, is the co-author of the article "Whites See Racism as a Zero-Sum Game That They Are Now Losing," from the journal Perspectives on Psychology Science. He comments that it's pretty surprising to find what you think of the wide range of disparities that still exist in society. Well, you Caucasian people created that problem. So, move on. Society of which show black Americans with worse outcomes than whites in areas such as income, home ownership, and health and employment. Here we go. The study was conducted by Somers and co-worker Michael E. Neutron of Harvard, asking a roughly equal national sample of 209 Caucasians and 208 African Americans to indicate on the scale of 1 to 10 the extent of which they felt blacks and whites were targets of discrimination in decades spanning from the 1950s to the 2000s. The scale ranking indicated not all wow indicates very much. Both groups reported roughly the same things for the 1950s, with neither believing that Caucasians experienced much racism at all during the turbulent decade, but similarly agreed at the same time there was substantial racism against African Americans. Both groups also agreed that racism against African Americans has steadily decreased over time. No, it hasn't, but I'll move on. But here's where the study gets interesting. Caucasians surveyed believed that the discrimination faced by African American neighbors has decreased much more rapidly than African American respondents. Furthermore, they believe that while African Americans now have it better, really? No, we don't. No, y'all set. Let me say this. First of all, if you never walked in a person of color shoes, Caucasian people, you can't say what we have and don't have better. You know what I'm saying? You don't know what it's like to be a so-called black person. You never experienced racism. You don't know what it's like to be judged by the color of your fucking skin. You don't know what it's like to be judged on your ethnicity, or how you people look down on us and look at us with suspicion when we should look at you with suspicion based on the inhumane treatment you have given us for the last 500 years and current. Okay, just because you don't say the word nigger, you don't say boy, girl, you people, just because you don't say phrases like that, or you're a criminal, you're a thug. Well, y'all do say thug, and that's code for nigger. Thief, that's code for nigger. Y'all just changed your words and you changed your tactics, which I'm going to break down. Just because you don't spray us with fire hoses and don't sick dogs on us like that overtly, y'all still sick dogs on us technically when nobody's looking. Y'all still shoot us down with fucking guns. You still you take your rope and still hang us and drag us by pickup trucks driving 100 miles per hour. You still harass us, you still treat us bad. So just because y'all don't, that's like me saying, well, women don't experience rape, so it's not like patriarchy is a bad thing. You know, rape civilizes women. If you said the stuff that you motherfuckers, you pale skinned monkey motherfuckers say is so damn retarded. You know, that's like, just because I am not a woman and I don't fear, you know, I don't have to worry about how I dress. I technically have to still worry about how I dress. But just because I don't show my cleavage, and I don't, since I don't have titties, I don't have ass like that and hips like a woman does, just because I don't wear a short miniskirt, and I don't have to worry about, you know, walking down certain areas, and because I can fight for myself, you know what I'm saying? Just because I'm a woman, just because, no, I'm not a woman, I know that, forgive me. Just because I'm a man, I know that. But I know I'm not a woman. I can't tell a woman how she should feel about certain things. No. I can't say to her, well, if you dress appropriately, you won't get raped. They look at me like I'm crazy. Women had to worry about how men judge them based on how they dress. Now, don't get me wrong, women choose what they want to wear, but at the same time, they have to be cautious of how they act and behave themselves walking down certain areas, and how they dress and carry themselves. Because if they don't, they become vulnerable to be attacked and be raped. Y'all understand what I'm saying? Just because I've never been raped, that doesn't mean rape doesn't exist. You know, that's what I'm trying to say. Just because y'all don't experience racism and you've never been through it, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. And just because you're not obvious, just because you Caucasian people are not obviously and blunt with your racism, that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It's just systematic and institutional. You know, y'all attack us when you know you can get away with bullshit. But now back to, let me read the rest of this. Furthermore, y'all believe African Americans have it better. Why? Because y'all don't say the word nigger like that? Because you're not overt with your racism? You're just more passive aggressive. So you can miss me with that. Oh, you can't speak for how we should feel and how we should react to mistreatment during the last 500 years. The Caucasian surveyed, have taken their place as primary targets of discrimination. First of all, I'm going to address all this shit. These data are the first to demonstrate that not only do Caucasians think more progress has been made towards equality than blacks, but whites also now believe that this progress is linked to a new inequality at their expense. Nor should and Summers explain. Now, you know they're obviously Caucasian supremacists. An astounding 11% of Caucasian residents assign the maximum rating of 10 to the seriousness of anti-white discrimination. Compare that with only 2% who reported the same of anti-black racism. Caucasians, the study found, often believe that racial equality is a zero-sum game, where one group gains at the expense of others. That's what you Caucasians benefit from. Y'all benefit from racism, not people of color. So stop it. What are your thoughts? I'm going to give you my thoughts right now. Well, I hope this is the end of the article. Yeah, that's it. Hold on. I'm here. I want to read some comments. This is by a racist. She's exaggerating. I understand why she said what she says. So, some of Black Lives Matter are actually taking it too far, to the point where they vandalize and hurt Caucasian people and shoot and kill Caucasian people. You know that's a damn lie. First of all, show me where, based on facts, that so-called Black Lives Matter is killing Caucasian people in large numbers. That's propaganda. Black Lives Matter don't carry no. Most of the so-called Black Lives Matter protesters, most of the people who are with Black Lives Matter ain't carrying no guns and shooting and killing y'all and gunning y'all down. And so you know that's a lie. They have not hurt y'all. Now there are some people who got into fights, but you Caucasians have attacked Black Lives Matter, and so in our reaction to, we defend ourselves. You want me to sit back and let you attack me because you're Caucasian? Are you crazy? Now, I mean, that's an idiot right there. My man, racism. Let me see this person's profile. Doesn't have any content. No videos. So obviously this is a troll. My man, racism is universal. First of all, I'm not your man. My man, I'm not your man. Okay, racism is a universal term. It means to treat someone in a negative manner based on their ethnicity. It does require a person on either side to be any specific race. It's all required to one person is an asshole based on their skin color and heritage. Black people can be just as racist as a Hispanic person, or as a Caucasian person, or as an Asian person. No, only Caucasian people can be racist. No other groups can be racist. Now, when the problem with people of color, particularly so-called black people, when we don't other ethnicities of color, like your Latinos, like your Asians, like your Middle Easterners, in other groups of color, they're not racist against us, they're prejudiced against us, and it's based on the lies and the brainwashing of Caucasian supremacy, how so-called we as black people are betrayed by the media. So they're told by Caucasian people, racist Caucasian people at that we're no good, we're thugs, we're poor, we're lazy, we're criminals. So they get a perception, and plus in the news they demonize us, and that's why you got these. That's why you have Asians, East Indians, Middle Easterners, and Latinos who think, well, we're better than y'all niggers. And actually, no, you're not, because if y'all so fucking better than us, how come where were you? How come y'all didn't march to fight for universal equality in the civil rights movement? We so-called black people who you deemed inferior were in the trenches fighting for y'all to get equal rights, fighting for y'all to get the opportunities that you take for granted today. We fought for equality. We fought for equality so that we can go wherever we want to go, have what we want to have, buy what we want to buy, go shop in certain places, eat at certain places, live in certain areas by our choice. Have the opportunity to go to schools and have the opportunity to have our own business, but we never got those benefits. Y'all motherfuckers did. Okay, so other ethnic people are prejudiced against so-called black people. They're not racist, they're just prejudiced, because I mean, I've never seen an Asian person hang up a so-called black person. I mean, I'm just being serious. Or them light a cross in a black person's yard. I'm not saying they're not capable of doing that. Same with the Latinos, particularly the Mexicans. You know what I'm saying? They haven't lit no cross in our fucking yard, and they haven't lynched us. They haven't raped and pillaged us and stole our resources and land. The other ethnic people of color have never enslaved us like Caucasian people have. These are the ethnic groups of color who want to deny that they're connected to African people, are trying to assimilate and fit in. No different than the Negro, than other so-called black people who throw their own people underneath the bus. I call them Negro Pen, handkerchief head, Aunt your Mama Coons, and Uncle Ruckuses, trying to get acceptance from the man, the Caucasian man and woman, to fit into their society so they can pass. So it's just basically selling out. But only Caucasian people can be racist, because y'all control the media, y'all control the educational system, y'all control all the institutions, the businesses, the schools, all that. You control many industries. You control all the industries. You control the government. You control the banks. You are the dominant employer. You understand? Y'all own the military. Y'all own the damn police. Y'all own the FBI, the CIA. Y'all control the weapons. Y'all control the drugs. Y'all control the food source. Y'all control the money. Y'all have the wealth. Y'all have the influence. Y'all have the power. That's how y'all can be racist. And plus y'all have a history of inhumanely treating people of color, enslaving us and exploiting us and violating the fuck out of us, and with your inhumane practices and mistreatment that you have victimized us with. And this is what this person don't understand. It does not matter what ethnicity they are. They're just assets. I know you're Caucasian. I'm white, and I have many friends who are of different ethnic groups, i.e. Asian, Hispanic, Latino, African. They completely agree. First of all, I gotta stop you right there. These you having so-called black friends, so-called Latino friends, so-called Asian friends. Let me get this straight. You, first of all, these so-called friends of yours are nothing more than self-hating. They're nothing more than self-hating sellouts. These groups that you listed to me. So the so-called black friend, your so-called black friends, Asian friends, and Latino friends, etc. Most of these so-called friends of color are most of these people that you want to hang with. Those certain groups that you seek out, those certain people of those people of color want to be Caucasian, so they're assimilating and kissing your ass. Most Africans, so Asians, Hispanic, who like to be friends with Caucasian people, really want to be white. Let's keep it real. They have no ethnic pride. They don't want to be dedicated to their fucking culture. They don't want to know their history. They don't want to understand Caucasian supremacy, especially so-called black people I'll break it down like this. Most of your so-called black friends don't fucking make you less racist. You having friends of different ethnicities don't make you less racist. I mean, more likely you are a closet racist. When I was speaking of your black friends, most of these black friends don't have no fucking black pride, no black knowledge, no knowledge of self, don't want to know their history, don't want to understand their plight. They won't even talk about racism. See, if I can talk about racism to another Caucasian person and explain my plight and they listen, then I know they're down. If I can talk about why I deserve reparations and they agree with me, then I know they're down for me. Most of these other groups don't want to talk about racism. They want to pretend it doesn't exist. You understand? They want to pretend it doesn't exist. They don't want to stand by the ethnicity. They don't want to stand and defend their heritage. They want to suck up to Caucasian people and hope they get their love and that they get love and acceptance from you. They will throw their own people underneath the bus. Well, so-called black people will throw their own people under the bus in a minute, but what Asian people do, what Latino people do, and Middle Eastern people do, they throw so-called black people underneath the bus so they can get acceptance from Caucasian folks. But they'll always be loyal to their own most of the time. But so-called black people will never be loyal to each other. That's why they do it. Because if you say something racist, make a racist statement to a so-called black person, an Asian person, a Latino person, etc., if they don't check you, then obviously you're going to be friends with them. If they would have checked your ass for saying something racist and out of pocket to you Caucasian people, you know what I'm talking about, and they openly talk about racism and address it, if they would have started doing that, you would not be friends with them. You would hightail it out of there and break off the relationship. Most of you Caucasian folks seek out other people, other ethnic people of color who worship you and see you as a fucking god. You know that's a fact. You don't deal with people of color like myself who speak out, who address racism openly, speak the truth, speak out against Caucasian supremacy, and hold you accountable. And if you say something racist towards me and make a racist statement and make an ignorant statement at that, a racist comment, or say something offensive, I will check your ass. You understand what I'm saying? So that's the difference. So if you make a joke about it to an Asian person, if he or she don't check you, then you know they're a self-hater. Same with a Latino person. If you say something racist as a Caucasian person, say something racist against them, or make an inappropriate joke, or make a racist statement, or just an ignorant generalization, and they don't check your ass, then they're obviously self-hating. They're self-haters who want to be like you and will take your abuse and mistreatment just so to have that so-called gift of whiteness. And so-called black people are no different, because we're guilty of this. You know, we will coon and buffoon and not talk about racism, not speak out against Caucasian supremacy to our so-called white friends. So-called white friends, I mean. Not say, hey, we deserve restitution. Hey, we deserve this. Hey, what are you doing to speak out against racism and Caucasian supremacy? We will never ask those questions. And if we do ask those questions, we'll get into an argument and not be friends with those Caucasian folks. We see other ethnic people of color and people of color as a whole, black people, Asian people, Hispanic and Latino people, and Middle Eastern people want to make Caucasian people comfortable. So we will be a fucking coon to them and kiss their ass just so they can accept us. That's what that happens. But if you are a person of color, where you are, particularly a so-called black person, a so-called Asian, a so-called Hispanic, Latino, a so-called Middle Eastern person who loves their heritage, who loves their ethnicity, and has ethnic pride and will stand by their principles and their cultural traditions and call out the racism, call out Caucasian supremacy, speak out, hey, this is white privilege and you need to check that bullshit. And you say, if a Caucasian person says something racist towards you, makes an inappropriate racist comment, joke, or say something, you know how these Caucasian people will say whatever the fuck they want to say, and then you check their ass, and if a Caucasian person, you know, don't apologize and say, hey, I'm sorry. If they don't apologize and they're dismissive of racism, then obviously they ain't your friend. Then the chances are we're not gonna be friends with Caucasian people when they do shit like that. So basically, you can miss me with I have friends of other ethnicities bullshit. Because like I said, if they don't have no so-called black pride, no so-called black knowledge, and don't stand up against Caucasian supremacy and call you out on your racist bullshit and hold you accountable, and you talk about your fucking plight as a person of color, and talk about reparations. And if you're a Caucasian person who gets dismissive and offended and then want to break up the friendship, then I know you're not a fucking friend to begin with. That's the difference. So you can miss me with them select few coon, self-hating motherfuckers of other ethnic people of color that you were speaking of. Because what you just said was bullshit, Dom F. If I see someone call me a derogatory name based on the color of my skin, I'm gonna call them out no matter what their race is. Nobody calls a Caucasian person a racial slur. Cracker don't have the same effect as nigger, okay? You Caucasian people kill me. Well, cracker is offensive. Pale skinned monkey is offensive. Even calling you a Caucasian is offensive. When y'all never been put in bondage, you have never had your land stolen from you, you've never been enslaved, you've never been a victim of rape and pillage, maim, lynching, and genocide and murder. You never had your children fed to alligators. You never had your communities burnt down by other ethnic people of color. They never called you a slur because, and I'll say it like this: if someone calls you a racist name, I mean, there's no backing to it because you never went through a traumatic experience of being inhumanely mistreated and discriminated against. And if chances are, if a person of color says something derogatory against you, they can't get away with it. So you can miss me with that bullshit. I live in a primarily African Americanly populated area, and most people are nice, but some who belong to the local majority group are complete assholes to Caucasian people like myself. I've had random strangers, some which were black, defend me from this discrimination. I'm grateful. But please don't look at race when talking to someone. The only race I see is the human race. Bullshit. Okay, let me say this like that. Now I'm gonna dig in your ass. This country, America, and Western nations, including Canada, the UK, and Australia, was built on racism. But America was built off racism. So to say, oh, you shouldn't judge a person by their ethnicity when you do it all the time, that makes you a hypocrite. See, the problem is, let me say it like this. First of all, there's no such thing as reverse racism. There isn't. If you sort of if you was about all the only human race I see is the human race, then racism and discrimination would not be still happening. You will call out the racism within your own group. You would end Caucasian supremacy. You would give everything your ancestors have stolen from different people of different ethnicities and cultures. You would give that shit back. You wouldn't be reaping the benefits on stolen land. You wouldn't have gotten free labor from our ancestors, okay, that you exploited and abused and mistreated inhumanely, lynched and killed, and tortured and dominated and oppressed deeply. If all you see was the human race, then you wouldn't have systematic and institutional racism. Then you wouldn't have police brutality. You would speak out against this shit. Let me say it like this. There's no such thing as a black racist. There's no such thing as reverse racism. Caucasian people, for the umpteenth time, you have never been victims of racism. You're not victims of racism now. To be a racist, number one, you have to eradicate a group of people, steal their land, steal their resources, manipulate them, teach them to hate themselves, rape their women and children, rape men, and maim, and inhumanely torture for long periods of time, and brutalize and steal from. Basically rape and pillage. Number two, you have to have wealth. Now, I mean, number two. Not only that, you have to convert people into your fucking religion, like Christianity and other European religions that people of color and other ethnic people of color now follow, and force them to assimilate and abandon their original heritage of their ethnicity. Number two, you need wealth, power, and influence to be a racist. Number three, you gotta stick together as one race to practice racism. You have to be ultra tribal. Ultra tribal. Okay? What other group of people will stick together through the thick and thin and defend a bad person like the way Caucasian people do? On their own, someone and call out their hypocrisy and bullshit. Y'all motherfuckers never do that. And if you do, if you're not racist, I'm not talking about you. Okay? Let's talk about, so there's no, racism is not a universal term. Tell me when, I mean, y'all have enslaved so-called black people. So-called black people have never enslaved you and brought you, had a slave ship. First of all, so-called black people never, we were the first people, original people to go to travel around the world, and never committed acts of violence and hate against other people, other indigenous people. We never, so-called black people has never enslaved Caucasian people and went to Europe and brought them put them in a slave boat where they were forced to be cramped up in ugly, harsh conditions where they had to shit on them, piss and shit on themselves, get sick and die. And not only that, you had a Caucasian people who would throw away people who throw so-called black slaves overboard to shark-infested waters of the ocean. So-called black people have never enslaved Caucasian people and went to Europe and brought them to America and forced y'all to sit in the goddamn boat, cramped up, laid up, and you pissing and shitting on yourselves and vomiting on yourselves and dying of diseases. And not only that, force feed, having your teeth knocked out, chipped, and forced to eat pork and other toxic food. And not only that, be thrown, have some of the so-called black people on these boats throw Caucasian people overboard and to get eaten by sharks. We never raped y'all women and children. We never raped the men. Practiced sodomy on the men and women and children. Okay? So-called black people have never enslaved Caucasian people, ever. And don't give me in Spain there was black slave owners. Now, first of all, if that was the fucking truth, that has nothing to do with, we're talking about what happened to transatlantic slave trade. We ain't talking about nobody else, okay? We're talking about what's going on in America, from Europe to America. You know, if you had so-called, first of all, to make that fucking comparison, well, there was black slaves. Last time I checked, no, they were not. That's not true. If we were just as ruthless and evil as y'all, first of all, we would not be in the current situation that we are in, and we would not be dominated and oppressed by y'all. Just because you want to, I mean, y'all had slaves. You were slave owners, and you enslaved your own people too, but you didn't inhumanely mistreat them like you treated us. You know, even if black people were in the positions of authority, that's what you don't want to acknowledge. People who worked, these so-called black slave owners, we didn't rape women and children like that. We didn't inhumanely kill them and torture them. No. Not to my knowledge. Not only that, the slaves were not slaves, they were fucking servants. And we paid them in a wage, okay? And whatever happened in Europe, that's a minute, that's 1%. Because if so-called black people were colonizers and conquerors like Caucasian people, first of all, Europe will be a so-called black continent. We would have black countries in Europe if that was the fact, and we would have the wealth and power and influence and control every goddamn thing. Then you have so-called black supremacy. So I don't believe that bullshit. You had black people who were slave owners in Europe. Get the fuck out of here with that fucking lie. Y'all lied too damn much. So-called black people has never enslaved Caucasian people. Okay? Get that through your fucking head. Number two, so-called black people have never never went into a so-called white community and lit a cross in their fucking yard and break into their fucking and we never had so-called black lynch mobs break into homes and kidnap and hang a Caucasian man, or hang his fucking son, hang his fucking daughter, hang his fucking mother, especially if the mother's pregnant, and we hang her and we cut her pregnant stomach open and rip out the fetus and step on it to death. Caucasian people have lit crosses in so-called black people's yards in their community. You have went into so-called black communities and terrorized them, robbed them, pillaged them, and about rape and pillage, basically. Lynched, maimed, raped, tortured, molest children, rape children, and inhumanely killed children. Okay? I know this is long. I gotta get my thoughts together on this. So Caucasian people have went into the black communities that you force us to live in certain areas. But y'all can go wherever you want to go. You went into so-called black communities and you lit a cross in our fucking yard and burned down homes, burnt down churches. That's what y'all did. Burn down communities for whatever reason, because especially when there were prosperous black communities, because a Caucasian female made a false accusations against a so-called black man. Okay. Or making false accusations of rape, then that innocent black brother who's a victim of a Caucasian woman's lies, saying she was robbed and kidnapped and raped, is lynched. When have black women ever falsely accused of Caucasian men of robbing her, kidnapping her, and raping her? Have a so-called black man ever lynched a Caucasian man and went into their communities and burnt it down, burned their churches down, dropped bombs on them? Not at all. That's why that we have never do that. We have never. Y'all have segregated against so-called black people. You went on produced and promoted segregation and Jim Crow, and with these Jim Crow laws. There's so-called black people in this country we never segregated against Caucasian people. You have segregated against us. You know what I'm saying? You have done that, saying we got to live in this area. We can't drink from this water fountain. You can't go to this restaurant. We can't sit at the same table and use the same bathroom. Y'all made them fucking rules. You can't marry. We have never told a Caucasian man. Black people have never told, the so-called black man has never told a Caucasian man, you can't marry a black woman. And if we heard you whistling at a black woman, we beat your ass like you did to Emmett Till. There's no so-called white Emmett Tills. We have never kidnapped the Caucasian, took away a Caucasian father's and mother's son and threw him in the fucking ocean and drowned him because that Caucasian boy wrote a love card to a black girl. That shit don't fucking happen. That has never happened. So-called black women have never falsely accused Caucasian men of sexual assault and rape and assault and battery. Okay, and even if she did do it, she couldn't prove it. Y'all wouldn't believe her anyway. So because so-called black women do not go out their white line on so-called white men. Y'all had sundown towns. Caucasian people had sundown towns. So-called black people have never had a sundown town. We don't own our towns and control anything within our fucking community to make the laws and say a Caucasian person cannot be in this fucking area after 6 o'clock. And if a Caucasian person is caught after 6 o'clock, we never raped them, tortured them, and lynched them and killed them. That's the difference. Okay? You understand? Now, we can't be racist and never had a history of practicing that kind of racism. We have never discriminated against Caucasian people because we don't have no damn power. We don't control the healthcare industry. We don't control the educational industry. We don't control schools. We don't control businesses and corporations. Like I said, we don't control banks and decide, and we don't control the jobs or decide who gets hired and who doesn't get hired, who's the last to be hired and first to be fired. We don't control the banks where we can't refuse a Caucasian person a fucking grant and a fucking loan. And if we do give them a loan, we don't charge them higher interest rates because of their skin color. And while we give our own people cheap rates on loans. You know what I'm saying? So-called black people do not own the military. We don't control and own law enforcement like the police. We don't control the judges. We don't control the politics of the government. We don't control who gets to be in office and who becomes president or not. We don't control the Congress. That's why I say we can't be racist like that. Okay, since you Caucasian people like to throw out reverse racism, tell me this. Do so-called black people celebrate the deaths of Caucasian kids, Caucasian people being murdered by the cops, by these all-black cops? Like I said, we don't have an all-black police force racially profiling against Caucasian people and shooting them down, especially shooting them down unarmed, then blaming the victim. Well, you should not be walking around with your Confederate flag. You should not be dressed like a hillbilly. You know, you shouldn't be giving the cops lip, even though they're violating your rights. You should never stand up for yourself when your rights are violated. We don't blame the victim like that, like y'all do, and come up with these justifications of racism. And I'll say this. Now, as far as you Caucasian people feel like you're being replaced, that's your fault. You're being replaced by Asians and Mexicans and other ethnic groups of color. But Caucasian people, but the reason why you're being replaced is not because of these other groups are taking your jobs like that. Caucasian people are the ones who have all the jobs. But Caucasian women getting the majority of the jobs over Caucasian men. It's usually nepotism. You hire your own people like that. You understand? But since you have a work shortage, it's not because of black people are taking your jobs, even though you call us lazy. No, your jobs are being outsourced to Mexico and China and India. That's what's happening. So it's your damn fault. So-called black people do not own control, don't have corporations where they're outsourcing them to other countries to get cheap labor out of them, and you're performing another form of slavery and having these other people pay them low wages to make your products and sell them for a cheaper price. Okay? so-called black people do not celebrate the deaths of Caucasian people being murdered by the cops, or being murdered by so-called black people and other ethnic people of color. We don't put them on. We don't glorify and celebrate the deaths and laugh when a Caucasian person is murdered. So-called black people have never had a lynch mob, and never had hanging rallies, hanging Caucasian people and burning them alive. And so-called black people have never had, like I said before, and I'll say it again, we have never took Caucasian babies and fed them to alligators, but Caucasian people have taken black people and fed them to alligators. Caucasian people have hung us, and the public watched, burned us alive, and laughed and thought it was funny. Speaking of that, we don't have so-called black men who act like Dylan Roof want to go into a so-called white church and shoot up a bunch of so-called white people and have this attitude, well, you so-called white men are raping our women, and get mad at over interracial relationships. You know, I forgot where I was, but like I was saying, so-called black men don't give a damn if Caucasian men fuck with so-called black women. What we have a problem is the double standard. Y'all can do whatever, you can fuck whoever you want to fuck and date and marry, but we can't. That's the double standard. You know, and as I continue, you know, we don't put on white face, and we don't when Caucasian people are murdered and have been killed, we don't be like them in Halloween. We don't dress like them and act like them and imitate them and mock them in their worst negative stereotypes for Halloween, like Caucasian do to so-called black people. They like to they want to imitate and look like Sandra Bland. They want to imitate and look like Trayvon Martin and Mike Brown and Tamir Rice and think it's funny, when it's just pure hate and make racist jokes. You know, if you want to talk about reverse racism, which doesn't exist, you tell me where are your so-called white Tamir Rices, your so-called white Mike Browns, your so-called white Freddie Grays, your white Sandra Blands of the world, your white Rekia Boyd, Renisha McBride. Where are those these white victims of murder, who are these white murder victims at, being murdered by so-called black people and so-called black cops? Your so-called white Eric Garners. That don't happen. So-called black people are not killing Caucasian people like that. And if a so-called black cop kills a Caucasian person, especially unarmed, he goes to jail. So-called black people don't say, what about white on white crime? And blame the victims and make fun of the victim families who lost their son and daughter. Y'all do that shit. Y'all have white privilege. Y'all can do whatever you want to do, fuck up, and still be forgiven for it and not be judged for it. So-called black people can't. Don't y'all get it? So-called black people do not control the media and demonize Caucasian people left and right, and then try to portray them to be thugs, criminals, and whores and sluts and baby mamas, when truth of the matter is, you have a lot of so-called white baby mamas and a lot of white deadbeat dads and so-called white baby daddies, child molesters and abusers. A lot of serial killers are Caucasian males. Serial rapists are Caucasian males with a few females. You'll catch my drift? I mean, actually, Caucasian people commit the vast majority of crimes. And not only that, so-called white on white crime is a problem within the Caucasian community, but they don't want to acknowledge that. They want to demonize people of color as being thugs, criminals, and terrorists, and rapists, and pedophiles, when that's not true. You motherfuckers are the most evilest people on the fucking planet. Y'all do a lot of treacherous ass shit. I got the numbers and facts to look at to back it. Y'all, the majority of Caucasian people are on welfare, public assistance. They're getting aid, they're getting grants, they're getting loans when most of them don't even qualify to have that shit. A Caucasian person can have fucked up credit and still got a nice house and car. That's white privilege. You know, when Caucasian people talk about their reverse racism, so-called black people are not dismissive and saying, oh, it don't exist, you need to get over it, it's in the fucking past. We don't, you motherfuckers tell so-called black people to get over it, it's in the fucking past. But you will be offended if anybody, especially a so-called black person, y'all don't tell, y'all, it's like if a so-called black person told y'all get over 9/11, y'all go ape shit. Say we unpatriotic. When we are the most patriotic people on the planet, why should we be patriotic to a fucking country who don't give a fuck about us? And if he told you to get over Pearl Harbor and it was an inside job, you'll be offended. To get over the American Revolution, get over the Holocaust, get over World War I and II. Get over the Alamo, you'll be offended. But I mean, but y'all tell black people that they need to get over it, but you don't tell the Jews to get over the Holocaust. You don't tell women to get over, especially if they're a rape victim, to get over it. You don't tell the feminists to get over the fact that patriarchy was a long time ago. Women being oppressed for thousands of years back. You need to get over that. You don't say that shit. You don't tell gay people who cry about gay rights and talk about how they're victims of discrimination, how what was done to them in the fucking past, to get over it. You don't tell the Japanese to get over the fact that they were put in the Japanese Americans to get over the fact they were put in concentration camps for something they didn't do when it came to Pearl Harbor. I mean, you don't tell Japan to get over the fact that you dropped bombs and terrorized the fuck out of Japan and bombed the shit out of Japan. You don't tell the Native Americans to get over the fact that you stole their land away and basically committed brutal genocide against them, damn near killing them to extinction. You have given every other group reparations but so-called black people. Like I said many times to you Caucasian people, if you are victims of racism, you will sure have compassion to others who actually experience racism. But you don't. All you care about is your issues and your so-called plight and pain and suffering. Meanwhile, you turn around and inflict pain and suffering and oppression and the marginalization and the degradation against other people. You know, it is what it is. So I'm tired of hearing Caucasian folks saying anybody can be racist. Oh, so-called blacks are more racist than whites, which is bullshit. Because like I stated, if that was the case, first of all, black people would not be nice to you and be respectful towards you. We wouldn't even interact with y'all. If you came into our neighborhood, we would treat you like crap. You would be killed. You'd be lynched. We would come into your neighborhood and rape your women and children, even rape you as a man, and get away with it because we have a black supremacist system which don't exist. So-called black people do not stick together and work together. We don't stick together. We're not tribal like Caucasian people are and other groups are. The biggest terrorists are Caucasian people. the biggest murderers, the biggest rapists, the biggest colonizers, who practice subjugation. You know what I'm saying? Who maimed people, murdered people. I mean, raped and pillaged and stole land and stole resources from other people and enslaved and exploited other people to their benefit. Our Caucasian people. We don't, so-called black people, whether their parents or not, don't teach our children to hate. Caucasian people, young or old, straight or gay, teach their children to hate people of color, and they tell your children that you are superior and you are God and you are perfect and everybody else is wrong, and you blame other people for the ills of the world, but you don't take no personal responsibility for what you have done to the world. But we can't blame you. That's blatant racism right there. So what I'm going to say is, drink a hot glass and shut the fuck up and stop playing the reverse racist card. There's no such thing as a so-called black racist. Nobody can be, no other ethnic group of people of color can be racist against you, but you can be racist against us. Own up to that and accept the truth and stop your white denial. You know you damn well you have white privilege. How about you use your privilege to call out the racism? And if you're a Caucasian person who's not racist and it's against racism and Caucasian supremacy, you need to call the shit out and separate yourselves from these evil, albinoid, racist devils. And that's all I gotta say. Like I said, there's no such thing as a black racist, and Caucasian people, for the umpteenth time, you are not victims of racism. So shut up and put a sock in it. I'm out, peace, and suck it up. I believe I made myself clear. I think I made myself clear by making this video that there's no such thing as reverse racism, nor a so-called black racist. I really can't stand Caucasian supremacists who believe that fucking lie and are pathological liars to begin with. Any Caucasian person who believes in that bullshit of reverse racism, that they're victims of discrimination, are really delusional. Tim Wise has stated this. You know, you talk about you not getting the job and some other person of color has gotten the job over you or got a promotion over you, but you don't look at the other Caucasian people who got the job or got accepted at school over you, got that loan over you, or any benefits over you. There's other Caucasian people who get benefits over other Caucasian people. They get accepted, they get job promotions and raises over other Caucasian people. They get accepted to school over other Caucasian people, and they get hired. A Caucasian person will be turned down for a job opportunity, but another Caucasian people will be chosen over them. But y'all want to blame people of color for that, because over a select few who gotten in, who was lucky to get in and get the opportunity, when many of people of color are, particularly so-called black people, are denied many opportunities in this nation. We don't live in a post-racial society at all. So stop telling us how we should fucking feel and that, oh, it's not like it was, when the truth of the matter is you just changed the game plan. Y'all still over, I mean, many Caucasian people obsess over so-called black people so damn much. They always plot on how we can say a racial slur or make racist jokes. How we can plot to kill a nigger. So-called black people do not do that. We don't obsess and think about Caucasian people and we don't think about how we can say the word cracker or make other subtle racial slurs and practice subtle racism against Caucasian people. We don't do that. You know, we don't obsess and how we can kill these Caucasians and get away with it, how we can plot. And then y'all want to start a race war, and Caucasian people want to start a race war and recruit other Caucasian people. You don't see so-called black people looking to start a race war. We don't have the numbers, and we don't manufacture the weapons. We don't have our own food source. We don't have our own property. We don't have the government behind us, and the CIA and these other or we don't have organizations that support so-called black supremacy. But your organizations, Caucasian people, who are owned and controlled by people within your group, support Caucasian supremacy. You want to recruit other Caucasian people to kill people of color. You understand? You understand what I'm saying? Now you plan how to fuck us over, discriminate against us. That's what y'all do. And that tells me how evil and sick and twisted you motherfuckers are, and how racist you are, how much of a bigot you are, to say that we don't deserve to live. That's evil. We never, so-called black people, we don't decide, and we don't act like God and decide which person based on their skin color decides. We don't decide for them whether they deserve to live or die. Not only that, you don't see so-called black people funding other so-called black people, especially so-called black cops who kill a Caucasian person. We don't send them millions. We don't make donations and fund them millions of dollars so they can get off. We don't, like, you don't see so-called black people supporting a so-called black Darren Wilson. You know what I'm saying? A Dylan Roof. There's no such thing as a black Darren Wilson, nor a black Dylan Roof. We don't. Black people do not condone any other black people murdering other groups of people. We don't. I mean, really, Caucasian people, when was the last time a so-called black person who murdered a Caucasian person, no matter who they are, whether they were a so-called, when did you ever see a so-called black cop murder a Caucasian person, and then all other so-called black people got together and donated money and celebrated the murder of a Caucasian person? Or your so-called black Dylan Roofs who hate Caucasian people so damn bad that we will go into a church and murder Caucasian people, and then other black people will celebrate the death and donate millions of dollars to that black person who committed that hate crime. Black people don't commit hate crimes against other people. Not like that. Not in that magnitude of numbers. Caucasian people commit the majority of hate crimes against people of color and other ethnic people of color, against gays and lesbians and other people who are not considered, who are different, who got a different lifestyles and different beliefs, different religions. You know what I'm saying? So to you Caucasian people out there, stop believing in your own fucking lies, and stop telling the world the lie that there's reverse racism and that you are victims of racism. Stop fucking reaching. You know, you need to now, and also you need to check yourselves and address the bullshit that's going on within your community, in your so-called white on white crime. Address how you got Caucasian males raping women, particularly other Caucasian women, and these Caucasian males who rape these females are getting slaps on the wrist and getting a very light prison sentence, less than 30 damn days. We got Caucasian males kidnapping women and locking them up in closets and houses, or some part in isolated rural areas of the country. But y'all justify and make excuses for that Caucasian male and say he had mental issues. Y'all always making excuses for your own bad behavior, and that's what's sickening. So-called black people do not do the things that y'all do, and even if we could, we know that's wrong, and we don't think like that, and we couldn't get away with it under your racist, Caucasian, supremacist system. So get your facts straight. And if you're a Caucasian person who's fed up with racism, you need to fucking prove it, and you need to go out there and start checking these racist Caucasian folks who make you look bad. I'm through for the day. I'm out. Peace. Good day.